Hello and welcome to another episode of FtLoC, a look into the world of everything that is Carfection. My name is Drew Stern and I'm joined as always by my FtLoC friend, Mr. Henry Catchpole.
Hello, Drew Stern.
I've realised I've started the new year 2020 with my hands back up in the air.
Exactly, yeah, you're doing that again.
Some New Year's resolutions have been broken already. I'm going to put them back down here. It's our first episode back since the Christmas break, but we have not stood still. It's been, a couple of weeks aside for taking a genuinely well-deserved holiday over the Christmas period. It's been straight back into it in January, trying to get ahead of things. And you appear to be wearing a hat, I've just noticed.
Yes.
Yes, is there any particular reason?
It's a bubble hat.
It is, yes, it is a bubble hat.
It's a warm bubble hat because this is quite a sort of a snowy, icy themed issue. So I thought, I'll put the bubble hat on.
It is still January. Actually, by the time this goes out, it will probably be February, but
yes.
It is still pretty cold, although as I've noticed it can get colder than that. I've never quite understood what the bubble was for on a bubble hat. Is it so you can spot people at a distance?
Probably, yeah, because I'm not very spottable at a distance.
No, I mean, you're so short,
exactly.
It's so hard to pick it out. Yes, we'll be covering some of the shoots that we've been on recently, some of the stuff that's coming up in the news, and as Henry alluded to, there's a bit of a snow theme, as well as looking back at some of the things that have been on the channel, some of the things that are coming up, and some random stuff thrown in at the end, where in particular I wanted to look at a gaming monitor that we spoke about in the last episode, which we've had a chance to try out, and we wanted to give a mention to stay tuned to the end of the episode for that. But how do you want to lead off with the snow? I could go straight into what I've just been doing. I was lucky enough to go along with Porsche to Ice Force Pro, which
Ice Force Pro.
I know, right? So
sounds like a freezer.
No, for me, it felt like a kind of Arctic Special Ops unit, Ice Force Pro, that goes and solves all the crimes that are happening in the Arctic Circle. Yeah. And they all dress in white. Basically,
all those crimes in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, basically it's like the end of Inception. They're all in white and they're skiing.
Yeah.
Or whichever Bond film it is where they do skiing. There's a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. No, it is Porsche's Ice Driving experience. And we'll put a link in the description to the school, but Porsche invited me along to experience it and share my findings with you. These things are not cheap, it's fair to say, but for those people who have money, they can go and opt from a whole list of different experiences to do. The one I had was one of the top ones, which was 3 full days of ice driving. And the reason I was interested to do it was not just because ice driving, and I love ice driving. Yeah. As I've done Lamborghini's ice driving school, I've been ice driving with Skoda, I've been ice driving with Volvo. I just love it. It's really, really fun. But it was my first chance to drive Taycan.
Okay.
Because that was now been added to Porsche's Ice Driving, Ice Force Pro, and their other lower ranked ice driving experiences.
How does the cold affect the batteries?
Well, that is a good question. They were not running them as long as they were running the other cars. Cold obviously affects battery capacity quite significantly. Anyone who's tried to use a digital camera out in snowy conditions, or your phone for that matter, can attest to the fact that your battery capacity can drop as much as 20% in efficiency. So that particular aspect was not what I was testing. The idea behind the kind of the film that I wanted to do to justify the fact that I was basically on an extended jolly is the notion that although Porsche makes practical cars, even discounting your Cayennes and your Panameras of this world, the Porsche 911 as a car is a practical everyday car with luggage capacity, comfort, even room in the back for very small people or amputees. Now, you don't buy a Porsche because it's practical. You buy it because it's fun. And we've seen over the 50, 60 year history of the 911 that the variety of things it can be used for is vast. From a GT to a track day car to your everyday car. Versions can go off on like proper safari, ones can go off-roading, rally, the lot. You can do a huge amount with it. Inevitably, we're going to endure electrification of all cars basically, and Porsche's not going to be able to hang back on that, and they're not just going to be able to live on track day specials that will probably still have internal combustion engines. They're going to have to sell their practical everyday sports car as an electric car in the future. Taycan being the first example of that. Does it show that we're leaving that variety of practicality and fun behind, or does it suggest that they're trying to keep those two together? It's a very complicated way of putting that. In the script, it's a lot more concise.
Excellent.
Can you still have fun in a Taycan when you're driving a car purely for fun? In the same way. So I drove, in terms of 911s, there was a C4S and a GT3.
Yep.
So quite, in itself, quite a good variety of cars. All-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. Those were both on 4mm studded winter tyres on a compacted ice course.
Yep.
And then it was just a case of like running those for quite a long time out and just having a great time and kind of setting a benchmark for like, this is how much fun it is. Then I jumped in a Taycan and attacked a similar ice track. It wasn't for as long, and I had a limited time with the Taycan, but it was like, okay, in this time, can I get as big a smile on my face as I could driving the 911s?
And?
Well, essentially,
I know you don't want to get away, but I'm genuinely intrigued because I've obviously got my opinions of Taycan.
So I lined up on just we had one big ice track setup, which was a slalom, big arc turn, and then another slalom down, and then kind of just looping this track over and over again.
Okay.
And so I'm on the starting line. We've done a quick sighting lap, so I knew what I was going to do. I'm like, I don't have a huge amount of time with this car. I'm not going to hang about. So I just planted my foot immediately. With all the traction control turned off, it just reacted like a very heavy, but like a sports car would. And all four tires just spun up and immediately flicking it sideways and just drifting it around. By the end, I was able to do a reverse entry into the last turn, carry it all the way around, put it exactly where I wanted it to. And then it became like more like, I'm having a really good time, but how much of it am I doing myself? Because obviously we were turning all the traction control systems off, but because they've got motors on each wheel, it's not even like...
Or have they? No, it's only two motors.
So two motors.
Front and
rear axle. But my point being, it's not a single power unit and then any kind of mechanical differential that's changing power just based on the physics of how a differential worked. No, this is a computer that has to decide where to send that torque.
Yeah.
So then you're thinking, how much am I doing this and how much is the car doing it? But you realize if a computer was getting that much in the way, I'm not sure how much you code for fun. Like, how do you code in, this person wants to enter through that gate backwards so that you can carry on this drift going round. So there's a lot kind of trying to process at the same time while also throwing this car around. And it is heavy. You just can't get away from that. The weight is low down, so you
don't get the roll.
Don't get the roll. Weird. Yeah, you don't get the roll, but there's a lot of momentum. So if you get a snap that's a bit harder than you're expecting, and also because it's perfectly balanced, it just spins on the spot. And it's very hard to kind of use the weight to correct itself. Whereas with the 911, because the weight was in the back, even when it goes wrong, you know that weight is now going to snap back the other way, so you can use that back. But in a more balanced car, it was slightly harder. But I had a blast. Like immediately, huge smile on my face. I'm like, okay, because we know that electric cars can accelerate in a straight line very, very well.
Yep.
And that is fun.
Yep.
You know, there's an entire motorsport based around that fact, drag racing, where you just go in a straight line very, very quickly, and electric cars are going to be great at that. And certainly to get fun out of long distance cruising, if you manage to hit the Autobahn, that's great fun. But fun comes in a million different ways in driving, and this was one of them, and I had a great time. So
how did you find throttle response? Because that's one thing I found on the road, where obviously it's a different sort of environment to some degree, because it's more sort of more nuanced in a different way, I suppose. But sort of that everyone talks about obviously throttle response being instant, which is sort of sold straight out of the box as just a fantastic thing, which in some respects it can be, but also the fact that you've got all this torque right there all the time. Can make life quite difficult, actually. It's quite a tricky thing to... I think
that would be the subtlety between enjoying it and trying to get like the fastest lap of an ice track, because I certainly didn't mind that you put your foot down and immediately the wheels spin up, because we were only on 1.5mm studs on the Taycan, I think, because it was a heavier car in general. That immediate throttle response meant the wheels span up really quickly, which was fine for what I was trying to do, because I was trying to break traction, and then the momentum of the car was just carrying it round. If I had been trying to be more measured, that may have caught me out. But I think over time you would have, because prior to that, I've been driving internal combustion engine cars for a day and a half straight.
Yeah. That's a long acclimatization period, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was 3 days of 8 hours driving a day. Although it costs a lot, that's the best value driving days I've ever experienced, which was really good. So a more kind of traditional. Delayed makes it sound longer than it is, but even with steering, you put it in and there's a fraction before it works.
Yeah.
Not having that with the throttle, I didn't push it. I didn't have enough time with the car for that to register as a problem, that it was so instantaneous.
Yeah. I think it's probably lessened by the fact that you've got the wheels will spin up anyway, rather than it just giving you total traction and acceleration as it would on a tarmac surface, if that makes sense, because it's lessening the effect because the wheels are spinning rather than just giving you immediate thrust, as it were. It's so counterintuitive to do this, but we're turning off the traction control, and then if you try and actually get off the line gradually, because the throttle response is so instantaneous, it's impossible not to spin the wheels. Yes.
But you'd expect that because you just turned the traction control off.
Yes, absolutely.
But as opposed to the GT3 or the C4S, you could turn off the traction control and still push away on ice.
And that's because you've got that.
Yeah, you're not in peak torque until you're way up in the rev range. So early on, that works. That's almost effectively traction control. And also because of the gearing, if you're coming round the corner at speed, you can change your gearing to help, change up a gear so that when you go on the response, your torque curve's different, so you're not going to spin up the wheels as much. And there's no gears, obviously, in the Taycan, so you have that same amount of torque all the time, no matter what you do. That took a bit of getting used to, but because I was just there to hoon, it was absolutely fine, and I had an absolute blast.
I think my favourite, I haven't done much ice driving, I certainly haven't done as much ice driving as you, but my favourite one ever, one of the best things I've ever done, was the below zero ice driving, which is the Tut Hill old 911s on a lake, and that was just so good. I've got a friend who's out there doing instructing at the moment for them, so I'm seeing all the photos of it, and I'm just like, I just want to go and do that again, because whatever driving you've done, you learn so much, or it's just such a
and so much is happening at a slower speed, so you've got more time to think of it as well, which I found for me really, really good.
Although with studs, certainly 4mm studs like you had, or even 5.
Yeah, we also drove a 718 GT4 Club Sport, and that was on 5mm studs.
Wow. The amount of grip you actually have, particularly under braking, is extraordinary.
It really surprised me, because I was really cautious with how much speed I built just because of that, and then you realise how much grip you could have, and you start pushing yourself harder and harder, and obviously that's when you get in trouble. I may have beached the car once or twice. It happened. We had a competition running amongst the different groups who would get towed out the least. Our group lost, and I had more than my fair share of.
But you were fastest, is that right? I
did. Yeah,
I saw a not at all self-congratulatory tweet about it or something.
Yes, we did a timed lap in the GT3 around a separate section. It was the only one where they actually timed us, and on that one I had the fastest lap time in the GT3.
Upholding the honour of Carfection.
I'd like to think so. I mean, Matt Murray, who is a video producer who's been working with us for 8 years now, knows me very well, and was hanging out with the instructors while he wasn't in the car with me, and was basically telling them about my nickname being Maximum Attack, and they were like, yeah, we get why. They told me to calm down more than once. They were amazing, they were absolutely brilliant, but they did have to dig me out with a Cayenne more than once, about 8 times over 3 days.
Other Porsche news, actually, whilst we're on the subject of Porsche, less snowy news. 2 things. One, did you see their Super Bowl advert?
I haven't yet. No, I know it's Super Bowl season, so
right. So their Super Bowl advert is out there. It's rather fun. It's go and watch it. It's just nice. But look out for, so when the guy gets into, I think it's yellow GT2 RS. It's all based around the museum and the idea of a car chase. There's a Taycan in there. But when the guy's getting into the yellow GT2 RS, if you look up on the racks behind, there is I'd say Mexico blue car, which is thought to be a teaser of the new GT3 in there. So it's very pixelated. It's hard to see, but it's nonetheless, obviously the internet went wild.
Yes, we had some. There was some speculation about a new flagship 911 that Porsche would be unveiling pretty soon, or at least giving press early access to, and we were hoping that was going to be the GT3. Turned out it's not, actually. It's something else, but you'll have to stay put for that.
Talking about other Porsches, what they have unveiled is the 718 GTS with not a turbocharged four-cylinder, but a naturally aspirated six-cylinder. Did you know about this?
I didn't know about this.
Did you know about this? Really?
I've only fairly recently got back from thawing out from Finland.
Fair enough. So,
I mean, that was what a lot of people were complaining about. That kind of emotional connection had been gone with the turbocharged. I felt I was still fine with it because I think the car was brilliant, but that will win over a lot of fans.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Certainly including me amongst them. So it's the engine, it's the 4-litre engine out of the Spider and GT4. So again, Porsche, they're never going to develop that engine just for that car, but we're wondering what it was going to be in next. There was would they put it into a lower spec 718, or would they? Anyway, four-cylinder engines I think are continuing for the moment. I can only imagine that sales will pretty much dry up entirely of them, but
I've stopped trying to predict what people actually buy.
Yeah, but so this is I've got some facts and figures here. So Cayman GTS costing from £64,088. Boxer equivalent is another £1,861. So it's slightly less power, so 20 brake horsepower less, 394 brake horsepower. Still pretty good. I think you'll agree. And otherwise, the engine's carried over entirely. The sports exhaust, you still get the sports exhaust system, 0-62 4.5 seconds, 182 miles an hour flat out. Only 6-speed manual offered at the moment with it, which is obviously the same as GT4 and Spider. You couldn't get PDK with that either. 20-inch wheels, sport chrono, sport suspension, 20mm lower than the S. So yes, it's all in there. It's about £10,000 cheaper than a GT4 or a Spider. So I mean it's not a huge chunk less, but equally if you're struggling to get hold of a GT4 or Spider,
that might be more the case than the cost difference, because you'd think, for just an extra 10 grand I could go up, but that sounds like a very appealing package.
It's still, so it's then obviously a case of people have been speculating what else will we see that engine in. So there we are.
There you go. Not everything is turbocharged. How brilliant is that on four-cylinder?
It's nice. It's very good, isn't it? So moving on.
What else did we have from the snow variety?
We've had two sort of concepts or special editions, and they both look pretty cool. First on my list is the Alpine. So I'm going to say this very carefully. Is the Sports X, which sounds a bit like sex, where you'd have a break halfway through and suck an orange or something like that. But it's sports and then X, but try saying that without it sounding like. Well, anyway.
Is that because it was meant to be in French and they would pronounce it Sports X?
I don't know, possibly. Yes, that's or
someone's got a real sense of humour.
I don't know. Richard Porter has ever it was straight onto that,
of course,
on Twitter. But it's a very cool thing. So for those listening on the podcast, it's like a jacked up, slightly wider Alpine A110 with some skis on top, obviously for effect. For effect, exactly. It was unveiled at the International Automobile Festival in Paris, and yes, it's 80mm wider and a body 60mm taller. It's got Michelin Primacy 18-inch tyres, and it's same engine. It's based on the pure model, so all the rest is the same, and it's obviously harking back to their rallying success, particularly the original, which was, I think, won Monte Carlo in 1971 and then won the first World Rally Championship in 73. So it's a very cool thing. They're not going to produce any, they've said, at the moment anyway. You can buy the rally version of an Alpine A110, which Francois Delacour, there's some cool footage actually on YouTube of Francois Delacour testing the RGT down in the south of France. So actually I need to go and have a look, because I thought he was meant to be taking part in Monte Carlo rally, which we might come back to in a bit, but I need to go and look. That's for later. Anyway, people have been wondering what is going to come next for Alpine, because they've done the A110, they've done the A110S, which we've done videos on both of those. But where does the company go from here?
Yeah, I mean,
what do they do?
They've stretched this car kind of to breaking point now in terms of what it is. Is it just for this one car, or
are they going to do a convertible version? Are they going to do
all of those
manual version? Obviously, people keep asking about, but
special editions. It's going to be like the Zonda, like just like every time you think it's done, there's going to be a new version just creeping out the woodwork.
But this would be quite a cool thing to do. I think it's sort of, or are they just sort of saying we're going to do an SUV, but sort of just getting people ready for the idea of a jacked up Alpine? I hope not.
That's a traditional bait and switch, that one.
Yeah, but
pardon me. Well, it remains to be seen. At least for now, there's still so much interest in the Alpine, and I guess some miles left in stretching out the concept, and well, literally in this case, and how much can be done with it. I'm excited to see it. I've still not driven it, which is annoying. No. I mean, we've sent you on both of the launches that we've had so far.
That much, but it's it left a big impression both times. So, and in fact, tying in with the ice thing, I did drive one on ice up at Valtra, and there's a video of that somewhere as well. That was pretty cool actually in terms of ice driving, because it was at night.
Yeah, and was that the same trip where you taught us how to do a Scandinavian flick?
It was, yes.
Yeah, which I used that advice to great effect and was perfected my very own Scandinavian flick, coming in a Carfection film soon. But it's not just Alpine that have got a slightly more rugged version of a car. Bentley have also shown up with something quite interesting.
Yes, the Bentley Ice Race Continental GT. So it looks a bit Ken Block because it's got different colour wheels, front and rear, so blue on the front and black on the rear, and it's a sort of blue version, I think, of the Pikes Peak livery they did, which was green, I think. But yes, same sort of thing. It's got some big old spotlights on the roof and some skis, and this is for what's it done? Wheel arches extended, 15mm increase in track width, and this is more of a race car sort of thing inside, so it's got full bucket seats and roll cage and stuff like that, because it's going to the GP ice race in Zell am See, which was something that I think existed quite a long time ago, something back in the 1930s, and last year they sort of brought it back, and they're doing the same this year, and I think the event's grown again. It looks really cool. It includes something called that's right, it is ski joring, ski and then JORING, ski joring.
Okay.
So you yeah. Anyway, you basically, have you ever seen, there's a video somewhere of people, it's like water skiing, but on ice behind cars. Originally it was done behind horses, and then very quickly people thought, hang on a minute, we could do this behind cars. You're being towed
by a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So yeah, that happens there, as well as sort of slightly more normal car ice racing. If normal car ice racing is a thing, but it seems like it's quite taken off. It's actually not bad value. It's €40, I think, for a weekend ticket to go and see this thing. So if you can get yourself to Zell am See,
that being the tricky part. But but once you're there, it's maybe for all of our fans in the Zell am See region, go check that out. The Bentley, the Bentley looks great. I think whenever I see a Bentley that's either modified like this or for motorsport, like when it's doing GT racing and stuff, you can still see its luxury kind of like poking through. So it's almost like imagine it like like an upper class army officer. Like no matter how much mud they've got on them, you can tell that they've had like an upper class upbringing. There's just something about them as opposed to all the other soldiers there. They're still covered in mud and they're bleeding and they're limping, but there's just something about it.
The stiff upper lip stands out somehow, doesn't it? Yes,
that just shines through.
Absolutely.
And I think it does in this car as well, which is impressive.
Got previous with a Bentley prepared for the ice. Because do you remember a few years ago they did those speed records on ice? It
does sound familiar, actually.
Sort of like a long runway basically out on the ocean when it all freezes up there. And Juha Kankkunen drove, in fact, a GTC at the time, which they did some sort of, I can't remember how fast. Yeah,
because a GTC is definitely the car you want when it's minus 20 degrees outside.
I don't think you could actually put the roof down either because there was the roll cage there or because it was just sort of...
Then it seems even more arbitrary to use a GTC.
Anyway, for whatever reason. And I drove that car back through Finland down to Helsinki with a photographer. And it wasn't a particularly interesting drive, actually, for most of it. Well, we did go and find Onimpoja in the snow, the rally stage. So, yeah, that was... And then I got driven up the hill at Goodwood in that car by Juha Kankkunen, which was... pretty cool.
Always a fun day out.
And one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me is that I remember sitting there, as you do at the Festival of Speed, sort of waiting for quite a long time before runs. So I was sitting there talking to Juha Kankkunen, which is weird enough in itself and amazing, and if you like rallying like me, a pretty cool moment in your life. At which point Derek Bell, obviously also a Bentley
ambassador,
exactly, wanders across, looks through the passenger window next to me, says hello, and I've met him a few times in the past, so said hi, and I then introduced Derek Bell to Juha Kankkunen.
They had not met.
So the fact that sort of I was the linking person between these two people blew my tiny mind, basically. So that is one of the things that will always live with me, as just being slightly...
You were the meat in a legend sandwich.
Right, don't spoil it, please don't spoil it. Okay, don't,
Okay, well, considering we're making things a little bit more base, just today or yesterday, I believe, the poster for the next Fast and Furious film has dropped, Fast 9, which was almost entirely, I believe, shot in the UK. Not set in the UK, crucially, but filmed in the UK. And it confirms the cast, and there's very much a familiar lineup with one new name, because there is no Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Hugh Grant? Is it Hugh Grant?
It's not Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant would actually be pretty good.
Stephen Fry?
It's not Stephen Fry. Even Stephen Fry, I would take.
Hugh Laurie?
It's not Hugh Laurie. No, it's none of those. Whereas removing The Rock apparently left a rock-sized hole in the lineup.
Rowan Atkinson.
It's Rowan Atkinson roided up to the max. No, John Cena is now going to... John Cena. Cena!
One more time?
John Cena.
Right,
Okay, for just for Henry, because everyone else knows, John Cena is much...
Is he like Emma Thompson?
He's just like Emma Thompson. If Gemma Thompson, if Emma Thompson spent the next, 4 years just eating protein shakes and hitting the gym. No, John Cena is much like The Rock, a WWE wrestling star who is now also acting and has been in many, many films. I am surprised you do not know who John Cena is.
No, I don't.
They all do.
I know who Hulk Hogan is.
Yeah, that's just showing your age, man. That's just sad. Basically, there is a lineage that continues on in the same way. In the same way that Mr. Nanny was the movie that Hulk Hogan was in, and now Jumanji is the movies that the Rock is in. Apparently now, Fast and Furious has been passed to John Cena. These things used to be about cars, so I'm not that interested, but it's news.
Is there a car on the poster?
There's cars in each of the individual posters with
any interesting ones?
It's similar kind of lineup. I will pull them up and actually see if you can see what they are. One of them is a motorcycle, and I don't know my motorcycles.
Right.
Let me pull this up.
Oh, there's lots of smoke, isn't there?
What is that?
That's a Noble M600.
Ooh, there you go. That is a Mustang?
No, is that not an early Skyline?
Oh, could be. It makes sense because that could have been one of Thingy's old cars. But this one, that's definitely a Mustang.
That's a Shelby Mustang, isn't it?
Yeah. That is John Cena, although that is a weird picture of John Cena because his arms look wider than his head, and I don't think he's...
Was he a baddie in a Marvel movie or something?
No. You're getting confused with the guy who played Thanos.
No. I thought he was in perhaps one of the earlier Spider-Man movies, maybe.
Nope.
I don't know. No?
Nope.
Oh, well.
What else? We know what that is.
Yeah. Do you want to say what it is just for the...
sorry. That's a Dodge Challenger. That appears to be with Vin Diesel in front of it.
I know who Vin Diesel is.
This appears to be a Yamaha bike, but that's as close as I can tell you, and that's only because I can actually see the Yamaha. I flicked through these. Actually, they're a lot easier to tell.
What's the green smoke?
The green smoke. That is a
Honda NSX.
Oh, Honda NSX. Of course it is. Being an idiot.
Or an Acura.
And that is a Jeep
Wrangler sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not big on my Jeeps. Wrangler or Renegade or...
No, I'm sure that's Wrangler. The Renegade's the little sort of...
but it looks properly lifted. That doesn't look like it's shop based. No. Anyway, this just reveals the cast. I'm not 100% sure, but I think she's definitely from Game of Thrones, who's been in it before. And those posters reveal the cast. And I mean,
Excellent.
those are real cars, and one real bike. But apart from that, I'm not holding out much hope.
You're going to watch it anyway, aren't you?
Of course I am.
I despise this movie that I shall definitely watch anyway.
I kind of checked out by 5, if I'm perfectly honest. But you stick with them, and then I got to the end of 7, and I was bawling my eyes out because it was the one.
Why?
Because it's the one
Is that upsetting?
It's the one where at the end Paul Walker had already died, but his character doesn't die, and him and Vin Diesel are in the cars, and they peel off and they go on down different roads, and like I watched it on a plane. Apparently you're far more emotional when you watch movies on a plane. Bawling my eyes out. It was very sad because they had his brother do the body double, and then they mapped his face onto him for that last shot because he was already dead at that point, because they never killed off his character.
Right.
So he's just not in the movies,
right,
but his character's still... It's very weird. Anyway, that's a thing that's happening.
Excellent. What do you want to talk about next?
Let's make it a little bit more highbrow. Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
The rally. Now, actually, so normally, obviously, I would be the one saying, can we talk about the Monte Carlo rally? And you'd be like, well, motorsport, really. But you said to me you wanted to talk about this, which is quite pleasing for me because it means rallying has reached a wider audience.
Possibly, but also it grabbed a lot of headlines over the last couple of weeks.
Particularly, I think, Tanak's crash.
Which, if you haven't seen the clips for that, then I presume that you are currently living under a rock because they were very widely distributed. And rally crashes are always like quite shocking, the bad ones. This was up there.
There are no gravel traps. Yes, this was really, really incredibly fast. It was over 100 miles an hour, I think, where he was pretty much flat out through a sequence of shallow bends, and as he came onto a short straight, there was a compression and a bump that was just enough to pitch him wide and down a slope, and the accident went on what seemed like for minutes.
Forever.
And I don't know how many of the photos you saw afterwards, but he sort of went off through the trees. I mean, I saw the
launched into the sky like 30-40 feet in the air at one point.
He went off there through the trees down the slope, and he just kept going and going. But the final sort of thing was it went down a small cliff, basically. So they were just thinking this is over, and it's testament to the safety of these cars now, because to withstand the repeated first lot of impacts, but you think, right, that's sort of dissipating energy as it goes through it, but then at the end of all that to drop off a cliff onto a tarmac road again is terrifying. And yet they both walked out of it, and yes, they were taken to the hospital for sort of precautionary measures, but Bentayga climbed out of the car. I think his co-driver actually asked at one point through the crack, whilst they were crashing, as they were about to go over this cliff, whether they were about to go into the water. And of course Tanak has previous with that, because I think it was in Argentina where he did crash into a lake and they had to scramble out of it and then fish the car out of the lake at a later point. And I've driven that particular car actually. But that's an aside. But it was just horrendous. I have again paid my subscription to the WRC All Live thing, so I can watch all the stages, and I did watch an awful lot of it. I'm very glad I wasn't actually watching live at that point, because I'm
the commentary, the clips have been distributed that show that the commentary, they're watching it as it happens. They're on the onboard camera, and they're just lost for words, because it's a shocking moment, but then they have to fill the airtime while it's still happening.
Absolutely.
20-30 seconds of this car just going on and on.
I mean, shout out to Bex Williams, who was in the commentary booth at that point and was anchor, basically, because to hold it together whilst that is going on is
not knowing what the state of the drivers is at that point. I mean, the obviously subsequently people upload their iPhone clips from the side, and I mean, it looks bad from inside the car, and then you see it from outside the car, and it's and from the onboard, it just feels like such a tiny little slip. Like
it's a sounds wrong, I'm about to say it's a good accident, but it's a good accident for demonstrating just how fine the margins are, because he's obviously had it in his pace notes, presumably flat through there, and it's just a slightly wrong angle or something. Again, you don't obviously make the pace notes whilst you're flat out.
No.
So you can't quite know how that sort of bump that at a 100 miles an hour plus 3 times the speed you would have recce'd at or whatever, you don't know how the car's going to react at that point. And so that was quite extraordinary. There's footage of Thierry Neuville as well through his stages, and it makes it all the more impressive when you see that and see how narrow the margins are. Some of the footage from him as well was pretty extraordinary for just not lifting. It was amazing. The other nice news from the event was Thierry Neuville won, which was really good. I was very pleased to see him win because he's been trying for all these years and finally got it. He's also giving increasing amounts to charity. He's giving to charity for every round he does this year. I think it's €2,000 regardless, 4,000 if he gets on a podium, and 10,000 euros for whichever chosen charity, so which will be something local to each rally if he wins it. And of course he won it, so therefore 10,000 euros to, I think, French children's charity. So that was very nice.
Brilliant.
Indeed. But Elvin Evans, from a UK-centric perspective, his first time out in the Toyota, first time for Sébastien Ogier in the Toyota as well, and Evans put in an absolutely sterling performance. He was leading the rally at the end of Saturday. He still beat Ogier in the first 2 of the Sunday morning stages, but their car wasn't quite as well set up as the Hyundai, I think, for those final stages over the Col de Turini. But he ended up third. He was only a dozen seconds or so, not even that, behind Neuville, who won it, and he was right in there. He was everyone else was miles behind those top 3, and it was fantastic to see him really stepping up and putting in that sort of performance, and hopefully he'll carry it on through to gravel, because regardless of your loyalties, it would be great to have Neuville, Ogier and Tanak, who were undoubtedly the top 3 last year, but to have somebody else up there and make it a top 4 rather than a top 3 would be just really nice to see, because more competition is obviously a good thing. So yes,
absolutely,
there we are.
So if you were on the margins of whether you thought whether or not this was a year to get into rallying, then I'd probably say that yes, it definitely is. We were talking about very fine margins, and that kind of is a semi-clumsy segue into something else. Things that are hanging by a very fine margin. Aston Martin. One of the films that we recently put up on the site and on the YouTube channel was my prototype drive of the DBX.
Yep.
Previously, you had done a full walk around with the production ready, but not
it looks like
from design. The car that I drove was an earlier, not physically ready, design-wise, interior, exterior, but could be driven. Not a final prototype. Actually, it's the first driving prototype and it's still in development phase. And this was in December. It was under embargo until mid-January when we put the film out, so we couldn't talk about it, but they were still bug fixing. Mainly finer points, steering feel, the suspension settings, the final settings. They've got they've got the technology to set it however they want. It's just figuring out how they want it to feel.
So Matt Becker was presumably there and taking notes and all that.
He was. The biggest input I had, which I can take credit for, is that I discovered a slight conflict between the ingress-egress suspension mode and Terrain Plus. Where sometimes it tells you it's in Terrain Plus, but it was
actually not
actually in the ingress mode, which is like difficult if you've never if you've been asked to go over some rocks and you hear a bad scraping sound. But as far as I know, they've worked that bug out. That's what this development drive was for, and I was just lucky enough to get a seat to drive along. You can watch the film and get a feel for what I think of it. It is obviously just an early prototype, so take everything with a pinch of salt. It's still being developed. The car is fine. it's a sporty SUV. They're going to dial it in perfectly. I'm sure it's going to be a great car to drive when you drive the final version in a couple of months' time, around May. There's a feature up on the YouTube page and the site about Robo Race. George Collado, one of our freelance contributors, was invited out to Silverstone to get a chance, and this seems counterintuitive or a paradox, but to ride along as a passenger or to drive himself a self-driving race car, being that their current version, they have a version that you can also drive. The idea being that the pro driver drives the car and that teaches the AI how to drive.
Yes.
It's like you press play and record and then drive, and then you've got your recording and they play it back.
You called me old earlier. Play and record.
Play and record. Obviously, it's more complicated than that, but it's worth watching, basically because, like all AI, all technology, there's sometimes ghosts in the machine, and the very first thing the car did was take him off track. Immediately off the line, like straight away. And George Collado is not just a good driver, he's a pro racing driver, and he knows the difference between a car going on track and going off track, and was able to pull it back. All survived, but it's definitely worth a watch just to kind of get a slight glimpse at what the future might actually be, and what it might actually be. Well, it might be the future, who knows? You can make a car go faster when you don't have to factor in a human being inside, for safety and for G-forces and all those kind of things. But do we want to see that? I don't know. Is it still a race if there's no human or at least animal element to it?
Would they be producing a new Top Gun film with drones?
They did. There was a movie called Stealth, which is basically Top Gun with drones. True facts. It's a terrible movie, but it's a movie about self-flying like jets, and then the AI goes a bit weird.
Okay.
There's also a movie called Firefox with Clint Eastwood where he flies a Soviet fighter jet that he has to control with his brain. They steal it from the Soviets, and he's the one to do it because he's the only one who speaks Russian, and you have to think in Russian to fly it.
Okay.
Firefox. Thank you for bearing with our movie segment of the show. Was there any more news that you wanted to touch on?
Well, there are obviously a couple of other videos that have come out.
Yes.
And talking of planes, actually, we could go into briefly the Bentley Bentayga Speed film, which has a segment about aeroplanes in it. So if you're an aeroplane fan, you might like to watch that, because it was filmed at Bruntingthorpe, and that's the home of the Cold War jets collection. So yes, we filmed a few of those because I think it's just it's one of those interesting places.
It's another great example of you going off piste a little bit, and folding in an extra element of storytelling, and that's why we love you, Henry. We get more than just a look at a car with your films, which is great.
There's a film with a Bentley and a Hanley Page Victor in the thumbnail, so go and have a look at that.
Yes.
The other film that we've put up is the R8's one.
Yeah, so we I am not sure whether we mentioned it on FtLoC at the time.
I don't think we did, no.
No, but we were very fortunate enough to be able to put together a shoot with the legend that is Vicki Butler-Henderson of former Top Gear and Fifth Gear fame and many other things, who was one of my favourite car presenters when I was a young man, and she is still amazing, and we managed to convince her to come and hang out with us for a day out on track. I think giving her the keys to an original Audi R8 manual helped sweeten the deal.
Yes, yeah.
She was over the moon, and I think that comes across in the film very, very well. Yeah. We're comparing the latest Audi R8 V10 Performance to the original manual transmission Audi R8 V8, because that came out before the V10.
Yes, by certainly a year, possibly a couple of years actually.
Yeah, actually the car that we have, the exact car, was the original press car that Audi had at the time.
Oh, was it?
But they sold it on because they didn't need it anymore, and then it was like, oh, that was a really good car. They found it again for sale, bought it back, and not only is it their original press car, it's the original car, but when Top Gear covered it back 13 odd years ago, it was this car.
Exactly.
It was actually people in the comments picked up on it. I wouldn't normally be dropping the name of Top Gear into the show, but it's just purely because people in the comments were like, and that segment, I'll go on record as saying that segment when they did the original R8 was one of the biggest pushes for us to make what is now called Carfection better than it was, because that was so good. It was so good, and I even referred Charlie back to that film, just going to kind of prove a couple of points. Not that anything was in particular lifted from it, but just like that's what they were doing 13 years ago. We need to have moved on and improve on that. And I think the film that we've got is a lot of fun. You guys look like you were having a lot of fun in the car.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a good day back last summer, wasn't it? In the sunshine. It was a really windy day, actually.
You can tell that when you first get out of the car, the wind's like it's to everyone on the podcast, I do apologise for that horrible sound. Yes, it was a very windy day, slightly challenging shoot. We had some mechanical problems that we overcame as well. But the film's in the can. It took us a long time to put it together. I do apologise for that. But it was.
We did a lot of talking in the car. So
it was a glorious summer, and because it was slightly more timeless, we wanted to take our time with it and make it look perfect.
Actually, brings us back to the whole ice snowy thing, because the last time I think I drove an R8 at that track was during the Beast from the East. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember the Beast from the East, which, again, showing my age, I swear was one of the animals they had on Shooting Stars. The Dove from Above and the Beast from the East. I think there was the Crow and the Crow from Below.
I remember the Crow from Below and the Dove from Above, but I don't remember the Beast from the East.
I swear there was a Beast from the East as well. But that not only dates but very much geolocates me to the UK.
But that was the R8 rear wheel series.
I drove that.
Turned up outside literally just as it was about to sort of start snowing, so I managed to get it back to Audi and say, could you put some winter tyres on this, please? And thankfully they did, which meant we could still drive down to Landau, do the film in the snow, and then I remember driving back. We were watching all the satellite images of this sort of storm coming in, and it was because I was one of the few people in the country seemingly on winter tyres. And you know, when it snows, everybody sticks to the inside lane of a dual carriageway because that's the one that stays clear, basically. So I was able to simply drive up the outside lane of every dual carriageway going, get home probably in about half the time of everyone else because I was on winter tyres. And I'm quite sure lots of people thought, oh, there goes an idiot in. Yeah, they wouldn't have known it's the rear wheel series version.
Exactly, they would go, oh, he's got Quattro, that's why he's there.
Yeah, I think most people just looked at it and went, oh, he's in a supercar, what an idiot driving past on the snow. But of course I have winter tyres, and it just makes a massive. I'd rather have winter tyres and rear wheel drive than Quattro and summer tyres. Definitely, absolutely no question. In terms of grip,
good rubber makes a difference.
It certainly does. Yeah. So, there we are.
Yeah, the crazy thing about the rear wheel series, from looking at it, you can't tell. There's no difference. Like, I think there's one badge on the inside somewhere if you look in the right place that says it. But apart from that, almost impossible to tell until you take it out on an icy road, and then you can tell. I've only driven it once. It was out in Spain. It was in the pissing rain around the same time of year. So it was. I mean, that was out on a drifting circuit, so the whole point of that was braking traction, so it was actually quite good for that. But yeah, at some point we're going to have to get that in on the dry. I mean, if they even still have one on the fleet.
Yeah, you never know. So, what else do you want to talk about?
We had one little film that we put out right on New Year's Eve, which was a fun little thing that I did with my daughter, because McLaren had a 720S ride-on toy that actually works, and I asked if they would send me a review unit, and they did, but then they also sent the full-sized 720S Spider. As the privileged position that we are in lets us get away with, someone just said, oh yeah, do you want to borrow this convertible McLaren for a week? I was like, yeah, okay. So we made a fun little film on that.
Is that your phone voice?
Yeah, that's my
explains a lot.
No, that was I took my daughter out, and she took that one for a drive. Link is in the description if you'd like to see that. We have a couple of films coming to the channel relatively soon. The next one, which the most recent one, by the time you watch this, is actually long-termer update on your Mercedes.
Yes.
Which takes us nicely into the long-termer update. So
absolutely.
You've put about 10,000 miles on that thing.
Yeah, it's gone back now. Actually.
It's gone back,
so
yeah.
It has actually gone.
So you have kind of your final film, and again, link is in the description, and you've gone into more detail in that. But just in a kind of right now, overall, what was your overall feelings for that car?
It was interesting. I think it achieved what I wanted in terms of having that as a long-termer, because it was a car that intrigued me, particularly with reference to its drivetrain, which was very impressive in terms of having that blend of performance and economy and usability every day, because it had the EQ boost system with the straight six, which sounded very good. And whilst I don't think the car as a whole was a fully fledged AMG, which I don't think they're marketing it as such, since it being a 53 rather than a 63, but if that engine or that drivetrain appeared in the next C63 or E63, I wouldn't be disappointed. I don't think I'd be totally bemoaning the lack of a V8 in there, because I think they could make it sound even better still. And I think the main reason why it wasn't a sort of a full-on AMG is simply because of the way the chassis is set up, really, and the sort of the four-wheel drive, which was the 4MATIC Plus system, which sent torque to the rear very quickly, so you could, it felt nice and agile in the way it responded, but just then didn't have that sort of up on its toes playfulness that a full E63 does.
Yeah.
So it felt more sort of straight, as it were, in sort of both senses of the word. So I think you could have that drivetrain in a more playful chassis and actually we have a very, very cool car. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
From a practical point of view, like it ticked all the boxes that it needs to for a car of that size. And
it's I mean, it's a big car, as cars are these days, but I did a lot of miles and a lot of long journeys in it, and it was perfect for that sort of thing, and was very, you could get over 35 mpg on a long run, which for that sort of car is pretty good for that. And yeah, it's not a car. Some long termers you really miss when you give back.
Yeah.
You think I love one of those in my life. This wasn't one of those. It's certainly, I think, had I been living with an E63 wagon, I'm sure I would, have been shedding lots of tears.
I was just thinking when we gave our RS6 back, that hurt.
Yeah,
that hurt.
But that wasn't the sort of, had I had one of those, I don't think I'd have had any surprises with that as a long-termer, whereas the 53, I felt like I learned something about its drivetrain and stuff, and it made me think about things. So that was the reason for having it.
It was journalistically useful to have
absolutely, which is the point of being it. There's no point telling people stuff they already know, is there?
Quite.
So it sometimes looks that way and you think you can predict stuff. Anyway, so enjoyed it, useful, enjoyed getting the tech. There's the big E-Class screens and stuff. I still think that interior was perhaps the other thing that really impressed me, because it was just such a lovely place to spend time, which is a lovely thing with a long term, or living with a car. It's the car that you land at an airport at 8 o'clock or even worse, 5 o'clock on a Friday evening when it's pouring with rain, and just that sinking into a lovely interior like that is it's very relaxing, a very nice thing to do. Puts you at ease, even though you're driving into stationary traffic on the M25 sort of thing.
I think that really is the battleground of the modern luxury car, is the interior experience, is that everyone's getting pretty good at making a car that goes well for 99% of driving opportunities, but it's kind of different. It's still some artistry in like how you make it look and feel, and all those systems working together. And
I think Mercedes is sort of, Audi's pretty good. I think BMW is behind.
Audi felt like they were getting long in the tooth, and then took a big leap forward and started improving quite a bit. And BMW is far more slow, incremental changes.
I think where Mercedes is probably better is that sort of they've still got a lot more of it's not all touchscreen. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so, you touched on that in your film about it. Yeah,
for me it's still a big thing. I think it's definitely better than touchscreens. But design-wise, I think even getting out of stuff like Bentleys, you kind of actually still got back into the market and thought, yeah, this is really, really right up there. So, those vents were good. They were a big sort of just something relatively simple. I know that sounds like I'm belittling them, because I'm sure somebody spent a long time designing them.
Probably an entire department of people going, what did he say?
I don't mean that, but you know what I mean. But it's something. You make a vent like that, a standout piece, and it lifts the whole interior of the car. So
brilliant. The other long-termers that we have, we're currently still running the Volvo XC60, which has been absolutely brilliant. The guys have used it so much in it's been the go-to production car for a while now, and we have a couple of films that our friend Alex Goy shot with the car. They'll be coming very, very soon, but the car that's going back most soon first is the Kia Sportage, which we've ran for about 6 months now. That's going back next week, unfortunately. And even though we've had that at the same time as the Volvo XC60, a car that is far more expensive, I really came to really love the Sportage. After I'd been away in Finland for best part of a week, I was really glad to get back in that car, because I didn't need anything that was crazy. I'd had my week of crazy driving. I just wanted something that was easy and comfortable and could get me home.
A GT3 and a Sportage is your dream two-car garage?
You know what? In terms of value for money, like if I was pumping all the money, I'd go and put money into the sports car, but then I'd still need something large and practical. Yeah. And I think bang for buck, the Kia Sportage does really, really well. So from that point of view, if I had a limited budget,
it's no 1500 quid Clio 182, but
yeah, but this was a lot easier for moving furniture from one place to another than your Clio would be.
Wow.
I don't know how much boot space you were able to claw out to the Clio, but the Kia is quite accommodating.
It'll fit an XL Mondraker mountain bike in it.
Well, there you go.
With only the front wheel off.
And that's all you need. You wouldn't even have to take the front wheel off in the Kia. As I say, we've had it at the same time as the Volvo, and the Volvo's got a huge advantage. It's much more expensive car, much more premium offering. But where the Kia has won out is the controls. If you want to do something like turn the cameras on when you're coming to a width restriction, much easier. You don't have to go through a set of menus that you have to do on the Volvo. They both work equally well once they're up, but it's just one button on the Kia, which is brilliant. And the seats, the infinitely adjustable Volvo seats, I can never find a position that's comfortable for me, whereas the Kia, you just sit in and go like, this is already perfect, this is absolutely fine. It's just weird where sometimes just more complicated and expensive doesn't work. It's sometimes like how a cheap wine tastes better than an expensive wine. It just depends on what you like. And I absolutely love that car. It's been a pleasure to deal with, and the kids have absolutely loved it. Like, they like the look of that more than the Volvo. Might have something to do with the fact that it's bright red, because kids like bright red cars rather. But that's going back next week. We will still have some content on it, including a final roundup, but thank you, Kia, for that car. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
The Clio instantly has new brakes already.
Woo!
To get it through its MOT. So yeah, it's been an expensive month for the Clio actually, but
fair enough.
All 500 quid. Plus the MOT. And the Escort's having stuff happen too. Do you want to talk about the Escort, or should we leave that for next time?
Let's leave the Escort until next time.
Okay.
We'll save up and do a big bumper Escort edition next time.
Yeah.
Any more car news before we go into random stuff, and the people who want to turn off from that can do so?
I don't think so. No,
okay.
I think that was
There we go. Random stuff. So
we've got a jingle for random stuff.
We'll figure one out.
Okay.
The last episode we talked about a gaming monitor that we were getting in, which was the CRG9 49-inch Ultimate Gaming Monitor.
Sorry, the CRG9?
CRG9.
Yeah, that one, right.
Yeah. 49...
Not the 8.
No, shut up. 49-inch curved screen. And the idea being that we wanted to hook it up to our... racing seat. So we've got the full racing seat with racing wheel that we have basically in a cupboard set up here, not because that's the only place we could put it. We could put it in other places, but if we put it in the cupboard, we can go and sit in it and no one will crowd over us. No one knows how long we spend in there. We just go into a wardrobe basically and not come out for an hour.
When you say we, by the way,
Yeah, well, sometimes me and Charlie go in and we watch to see who can beat whose lap time. You do kind of look and try and steal lines and braking points, that kind of thing. Anyhow, we tried to hook up the monitor to our PlayStation, and we got it to work, but unfortunately, it stretched the image rather than accommodating the correct resolution.
Okay.
Which was not ideal. So
if you squinted, did it work?
No, you'd almost need to do the opposite of a squint. You kind of needed your vision to squeeze it back up, but then that
you use your hands for other things, don't you? You can't do that, and
basically makes that it defeats the purpose of having a widescreen monitor. But the quality of the monitor was really great. So I was a bit miffed that we weren't able to get it work with a console. Although we gave it a good go and we had quite a lot of fun playing on it, it gave a stretched image. So it's not as compatible for consoles. However, I have subsequently had a chance to play it hooked up to a PC, and it was brilliant because you're able to sit so close. The height of it is just the height of a normal monitor, but then when you're in it, it fills your peripheral vision with the car. And depending on what viewpoint, if you're playing a racing sim, what's your preferred point of view? Like the view, do you want one inside the car where you literally see the A-pillars and like at the windscreen? Do you like one like on the bonnet? Do you like one ahead of the bonnet? Do you like one completely behind the car? I feel it's quite a contentious issue. So
I think, I'm trying to remember, it's so long since I've played racing games. It's one of the things I actually kind of want to rectify this year, is get back into it a little bit, because I'm going to have so much time, obviously. But I think I liked it with almost nothing in front, so as though it was you right on the nose of the car, or something. Sort of just, I think I found it distracting having the artificial in-car.
Yes, I find exactly the same.
It's not quite real, so therefore it somehow doesn't work.
I agree. My preferred point of view is just on the bonnet, where you get a little bit of the front of the car, so you can get an idea of where you're putting the wheels. But a lot of racing purists, for sim race purists, like the view to be inside the car. I think they think it's more realistic. I would argue people who are fortunate enough, like you and I, to have driven one or two race cars, know that when you're in a race car, you're not even aware of the car. You're just looking out the window.
Yes.
So and your eyes are kind of exposed for that. So it showing it off is just not real.
Yes. Yeah.
Plus that you've already got a wheel that's here. Yeah. I don't want to see another wheel over there.
No.
Anyway, the view that I had it set to was on the bonnet, and I found that with the curved screen, you're getting a greater sense of speed because you're getting the stuff coming around the side as well.
Do you have to have a game that works specifically with this screen?
Yes, but most do.
Right,
so
okay.
Because a lot of them already are configured for multi-screen, where you have like two screens on the side.
Okay, I see.
So most higher-end driving games, I haven't found any that it didn't work with, but I got a chance to play it with the curved screen, and it was sublime. It was really, really good. It's not the cheapest of monitors. I think it's retailing for £1,300, which is pricey. But if you're spending a lot on a home racing rig, I can definitely recommend it.
Excellent.
Yes. Was there anything else you wanted to add into the random chat?
I don't think particularly. I had a couple of books recommended to me through that Bentley film we were talking about earlier. One which was Phoenix Squadron, which I'm looking forward to reading, which is another Roland White one. And what else was it? Chicken Hawk, which was separately actually, which is about flying helicopters. But the one I have read, which has been on my pile of books for ages to read, was Wings on My Sleeve, which is by Eric Winkle-Brown, who's this incredible test pilot who still holds world records for, I think, the most number of different types of plane flown, and also a number of deck landings on a carrier, and lived just through his extraordinary of age. He flew in, he was part of the Royal Navy actually, but then was a test pilot at Farnborough after the war as well, helped bring planes back from Germany, so flew all the different sort of nationalities of fighter from the war, then went into, obviously jet planes were coming in at the end of the Second World War, so he flew some of the phenomenally dangerous early jet planes, and then later ones as well, and just one of those lives you can't believe that one man has crammed quite so much into it, and that lovely sort of dry, unassuming where it's written nice sense of humour in places, but just not over egging anything particularly, just saying through it how it was, which makes it all the more remarkable, I think, in the way it's told. So yes, Wings on My Sleeve.
Wings on My Sleeve, highly recommended by Henry. Coming soon
Computer
to
games and books. There we are.
Yeah, coming soon to the Carfection book club. And the only last random thing is I'm doing stand up, and if you follow me on social media and you can see all the gigs I'm playing. If you want to come and see me do stand up, it's not very good. I can't highly recommend it, but if you fancy seeing it, that's the place to find out. Speaking of social media, remember that you can follow Carfection. And we haven't. Ooh. You can follow Carfection on Instagram at Carfection Films, on Twitter at Carfection, and if you want to follow Henry, it's at Henry Catchpole on all platforms, and I'm at Drew Stern, Stern spelled Stearne. Every time I spell it and the podcast goes out, I get more followers.
Do you?
Yeah, I swear it's just because I've spelled it. And
should I spell Catchpole then?
It's probably, well, it is kind of
CATCHPOLE.
Yeah, but I feel like if you had to guess how to spell Catchpole, you would guess correct, because it's catch and pole. Whereas Stern, we've got 2 extra letters thrown in for some reason. Yeah, but it's not ERN, it's EARN. Yeah. Anyway, follow us there.
It's on the back of a boat.
It is on the back of the boat. Yes, ship. Not the back of a boat.
What's the back of a boat?
It's just the back of the boat.
It's not stern? It's
no.
Not stern of a boat?
It's a stern on the ship. Anyway, not so much with a finale, but with a stumble. We've come to the end of this episode of FtLoC. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.